All right. Good afternoon. My name is Ali Kujuri, and for those of you who do not know me, I am an adjunct professor at at the Engineering Science Department, and also one of the organizers of this lecture series. I would like to thank you all for coming here to this second lecture of the academic year, and believe it or not, the 89th lecture of the series since we started the Engineering Science Lecture Series in 2006. In fact, Dr. Saeed Rahimi, who is sitting there, is one of those guys who really helped getting this lecture series in place. Also, I would like to thank Keysight Technologies, formerly Agilent Technologies, that has been sponsoring this lecture series since the start. Before I introduce our invited speaker, let me mention that at 5:30, the pizza is going to arrive, and that's going to be right after of course, the talk. And then the next talk in the series will be on the 2nd of October. And the title of the talk is Matter Matters, Cradle to Cradle, Design and the Circular Economy. Basically, I invited this Dr. Sudeep Rao, who is in fact based in San Francisco, and the reason that I invited him is, by the way, a chemist. But I invited him because the month of October is the Sustainability Week, in fact, for the university, that people should be aware of eco and also the environment protection and so forth. And for the title of the talk for today is the future of enterprise cloud network. Mr. David Krauthamer is information systems executive with over 20 years of enterprise and in the high technology, internet services and financial sectors. He has served as a CIO at Advanced Fiber Communication, where we have in fact the lab, that's across the hall. Before it was acquired by Tellabs, as he was saying about it, where he was responsible for implementing and deploying an enterprise-wide information strategic plan. David has executive experience implementing enterprise resource planning, customer relationship management, supply chain and engineering systems. He's currently the CEO of Intelenex, a global systems integrator for Oracle. Over the past several years, Intelenex has grown into one of the largest Oracle Cloud implementation partners in the world. In that capacity, Intelenex works with enterprises to transition their applications into the realm of cloud computing. David holds a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science from State University and has completed executive programs at the Stanford and California Institute of Technology. So here is Mr. Krauthamer.
Well, that sounds a lot nicer than it really is. So guys, my goal actually today is to get you guys pumped up about the technology in the future. That's it. If I accomplish that, I've done something. If not, I haven't. So I want to just, we're going to pull this together. So I'm going to talk to you guys about cloud computing, kind of what's going on in cloud computing, and then I'm just going to talk to you guys about starting your own business, being an entrepreneur. I started my own business. I'm really excited about people wanting to go out and create. And I think the roadmap or the path there is a lot easier than you might think. Let's see if the technology works. This is my team, or a stock photo off the web. So guys, we have 175 consultants. So I started this business, like I said, 10 years ago, and I started it by just picking up the phone and cold calling. How many of you guys have cold called? Fundraised, fund rose, cold called. Boy, a little sheltered. Seriously, your parents didn't have you doing cold calls. Okay. So we have over 300 customers. We got a lot of big logos and a lot of companies that you're aware of. We've done over 1,500 projects, and we're at this point the largest cloud computing partner for Oracle. Everyone's heard of Oracle. Everyone knows Larry resigned today, right?
We didn't know.
He resigned today. He stepped down. So he left the business to Mark Hurd and a woman named Safra Cass as the CFO. I actually went to the hockey game with Mark Hurd a couple months ago, and so he's left. Anyone have an impression of what Oracle does? Any idea? You guys have any idea what Oracle does?
I used to work at JDS Uniphase, and we use some Oracle systems to control supply, raw materials, and stuff like that.
Exactly. So it's the system. Oracle is the system these companies use. Their operational systems to function. Supply chain, CRM. You guys have seen these out. Have you studied any of that in school, or is that more like an operations focus? So the nice thing about Oracle and these operational systems is any company you walk into, guys, they're all the same. Whether you're making potato chips or microchips, whether you're selling internet services or magazines, they all operate in almost the exact way. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. These are some of our logos, just kind of some in each tier. Riot Games, which I've never even heard of. Have you guys heard of Riot Games?
Yes.
Okay, League of Legends.
Yes.
I had no idea what this company has one internet game and their revenue is $1 billion a year. So it's a bunch of 22-year-olds. Like you walk into Riot, they're in Santa Monica, and they're a bunch of 22-year-olds, and they make $1 billion off selling you a fake sword that doesn't even really exist. So great business model, right? That's exactly what, from a cash flow perspective, that's what you want. You want a business that does that. Some other logos, boy, I tell you, it's all over the board. So guys, if they're a company that I can make money off of, we're in it. So the nice thing, like I said, is all these companies have problems. They have operational problems. We're competing in a global market that's super competitive. So my costs have to be this, and my efficiency has to be quick. So we all buy from Amazon because we know what we're going to get. And a day later or 2 days later with Prime, I get it. All these companies are trying to catch up. They're trying to be efficient. So we've gone to these organizations, and these are cloud customers. Before cloud, there was on-premise. JDSU had an on-premise version of Oracle. So if I go in, and on-premise means, cloud evolution, revolution. So JDSU had a server room. I had a big server room at AFC. I built it. It was $3 million. Had 5 huge air conditioners in it. It was freezing in that room. So that's where I put my application, my on-premise application. And JDSU spends millions and millions of dollars a year just to keep that thing running, right? It's very, very expensive. So you have to have a DBA. You have to have all kinds of resources to program it, to keep it up, to keep the air conditioners going. This is the past. Okay. So, so in cloud computing, we had our own data center, right? We housed all this. We maintained it. We supported it. In cloud computing, it's basically I'm taking the system, I'm making it look pretty. It's a web application, so it looks really pretty. And then I'm putting it out on someone's servers. You guys have all seen Amazon, AWS. So I'm putting it out in the cloud. So cloud is just I'm taking my server room and moving it out somewhere else, putting a pretty front end. So when they talk about cloud apps, you hear a bunch of terms. You hear SaaS. Has everyone heard the term SaaS, software as a service? Anyone heard that term? Yeah, statistical. So you see these that are like Salesforce.com, Workday, NetSuite. Anyone heard of those companies? Workday, NetSuite, Salesforce. You've all heard of Salesforce, right? Don't let me down. You have to have heard of Salesforce. The CEO of Salesforce, Mark Benioff, he worked for Larry Ellison, who is this ran Oracle. He was this marketing guy, started off. Larry, I had the opportunity to be out on Larry's boat. He has a 480-foot boat, and he has a person who makes $90,000 a year by following his boat to pick up the basketballs that come off the basketball court to land in the water. How would you like that job?
Vacancy there.
Yeah, 90 grand to pick basketballs out of the water. And he won that job by being the fastest out of anyone at pulling those basketballs out of the water. And it's not easy, right? You know, that basketball goes that way, you got to get there quickly. So SaaS, or what we traditionally call cloud, are these applications that are fed up from a remote server. And they look pretty, right? You use Google right now. So the old applications were very, you know, they had a lot of clutter. They looked very old. You've seen green screen applications. You've seen kind of the older hosted applications. The new apps are pretty, right? They're simple. They're pretty. They're like marketing pieces, right? So we have a phone, and the user interface is really, really sophisticated. There's something called PaaS, too. Any guess what that is? It's called Platform as a Service. So before, you guys are all programmers, right? I mean, you guys, who has not programmed in this class? Okay, one. So before, you'd write a C program, right? I'm on my computer, I'm writing something in C or Java or whatever, and I write a program and I run it, et cetera, et cetera. So the problem with that is I create a program. How do I distribute that program out to the universe? Which is where I get my value from, right? So PaaS is another form of cloud where I'm actually doing my development in the cloud. So I have a database, I have an application development framework, and I can develop an application and distribute it to 1 million people, right? Because the power of the web is not that it's different, it's servers, it's the same as it's been for the last 35 years or 40 or 50 years. It's just that I can distribute what I do quickly and infinitely, right? So that's very, very powerful. So now if you use PaaS, I can develop my app, my cool app, right? My mobile app, my iPhone app, or whatever, and I can distribute it to the universe quickly. And then the third is what we call IaaS, which is infrastructure as a service, right? So what we're just doing is taking all those things that lived in a data center and moving them out into the cloud, and then charging you by the drink too. So with all these apps now, with Oracle at JDSU, I'm with Oracle all the time. So when I sold to JDSU, I charged them $5 million for software and $5 million to install it. I loved that, frankly. I hate the cloud because I can't charge you $5 million to walk in your door. So in the cloud, everything's sold by the drink, right? You're sold by the user. You're sold some monthly subscription fee for $45 or $9 or $3. So these are the different forms of cloud computing, and they come together to form. I have an application. I'm going to develop a piece off that application, or an actual infrastructure is located in the cloud. Organizations are running to the cloud, right? Because it's cheaper. I don't have to worry about servers. If I'm a telecom company, do I care about IT? I don't care about my IT. I don't want to host. I don't want to take care of it. I'm a telecom company. I care about designing chips and stuff like that. So what it does is, companies have to focus on their core competency, and their core competency is what they do. So if you're not focusing on your core competency, you're not helping your business. So they're taking these things and moving them out and buying them like a utility, buying them like something you buy from PG&E. So they're taking all these services and making them utilities. And that's really powerful if you think about it, because you take everything in a business that's not core and you make it a utility. You see the leverage, right? So when you guys start your company, you want to focus on what you're going to do and get rid of everything else, right? That's what smart people. You can't be good at everything. It's physically impossible. You know that? You can be good at one or two things, and you need to focus on those heavily. Does this make sense? Any questions about this? You've probably seen some of these companies, but maybe not. I mean, Salesforce, Eloqua, Jive. But these companies, they go out and they're making a ton of money. Uber has what is Uber's valuation? It's $18 billion, right? $18 billion because the guy wrote an iPhone app to get a car to you quickly, right? We're doing the implementation at Lyft. Does anyone use Lyft? Okay, so Lyft is a much smaller version of Uber. And literally, what do they got? They got an iPhone app that lets you summons a car. One thing, so obviously everything's moving towards mobile because the form factor, it's with you, et cetera. And the one thing the cloud does well is the whole issue around user interface is really critical in cloud computing. So now you see a lot of marketing people, a lot of people who have a very UI focus developing these applications. So they're simple. Like, what's some web app you guys like? Give me an example. What's that? Nothing. What's that?
Wolfram Alpha.
Wolfram Alpha. So I've heard my son show me Wolfram Alpha. It's a statistic. It's like Riot. I said, we're working on this game company, Riot. He's like, you need to win that deal, man. You absolutely have. But what's some other apps you guys use? iPhone apps? Evernote. Okay. Evernote. You notice how, like, in the mobile context, the user interface is really, really, really simple. So before it was all about the technology. When I had to manage servers and all this stuff, I had to worry about technology. Now I worry about the user interface because that's what matters, right? So now you see this huge emphasis in college and everywhere else on kind of melding the art of it with the technology. So you all have to be artists, right? We all have to be artists, right? So that artsiness in you, you have to kind of dig deep and pull out. And how many people in this room consider themselves artistic? Wow. I'm disappointed by that. Stick figures. So, okay, you guys seem reluctant to answer that like being an artist is a bad thing. I think being an artist in this day and age and technology is everything. It's about creating an environment and a user interface that people can use. Same thing in engineering, right? It's the form factor. It's the art of it. It's like Jobs creating this super elegant. You know, Jobs used to always go off on how elegant it was, right? It's all that. It's all that. Peace. And then kind of the UI on the user interface in web apps is becoming much more simpler, right? Much more intuitive. It's picture based. So you like I said, you guys work with old systems, and you know they're really cumbersome. They're really ugly. I got my computer science degree 30 years ago, and I didn't like computers because they were ugly, guys. I programmed in assembly, and you know I wrote 1,000 lines of assembly to move the cursor from one place to the other. And I was like, boy, this isn't for me. This is hard for me. I didn't enjoy it now, but now it's all about how you interact with it. Much more useful, much more enjoyable. So guys, what I want to talk to you about right now is just, so I work with companies to help transform what they do. Okay? It's a big market, right? You guys have heard of Accenture and Deloitte and just all these companies, Oracle, Workday, they're all SAP, they're all basically developing and implementing software that companies use to transform their businesses. And that whole umbrella of business transformation is huge. There's the amount of money spent in that umbrella is enormous, and it's worth taking note of. I understand you guys are gonna go into respective engineering, but I was talking to, was it Rob? Rob? So Rob's getting finance and engineering, right? So he has that kind of hybrid view. It's really important, even if you're an engineer, to understand the finance, to understand operations, because your overall success is going to be really dependent on it. So here's kind of the flow in a business. You know, like I said, businesses are all the same, whether you're selling potato chips or microchips. They function in the exact same way. So they have inefficiencies, they have efficiencies, and frankly, it's just as good to be an efficient potato chip manufacturer as to be an efficient microchip manufacturer. So there's three big categories of systems, or processes, we say. The first is what we call customer acquisition, and that's acquiring a customer, right? So there's a cost and a process for acquiring a customer. And this is where you'll see systems like Salesforce. This is where we manage deal flow and pricing and quoting. And this is where I trap you in buying from me. We do a lot of electronic marketing, and what I do is I'll send out 100,000 emails, just plain text emails, like, hey, personal note to you. And then I'll start following it up with a chain based on what you do. So if you click on something, if you refer to my website, I put you on a completely different chain. And then I'm storing every bit of information about what you did. So 9 months down the road, you don't even know it, but I've tracked everything you've done, and I'm tailoring everything I'm telling you based on that, right? And you think it's so subtle, right? But it's so powerful because you don't know what's happening to you. But we're really good at that. We're really good at brainwashing you. We get a lot of our business that way. So this whole initial flow is kind of this customer acquisition flow. I've gotten a customer. And some companies it's very expensive and time consuming, some companies it's very cheap. The second flow is the operational flow, and that's kind of like I take an order and then I ship a product. And every company takes an order and ships a product, no matter what you're doing. If you're in a service company, you're taking an order and shipping a product. Can you guys give me an example of a company that doesn't take an order and ship a product? In some sense, you always do. If you're an R&D firm, you're taking an order, you're building something. So there's the execution piece. So this is where you have the Oracles and the SAPs, and there's this huge battle brewing right now for who's going to own the cloud, right? There's a huge battle. I'm in it every day. It's like between Workday, which was an offshoot of Oracle, of course. All these companies were offshoots of Oracle. And it's about having the most efficient process for actually taking that order and shipping that product. We're at Pandora. We're at Google, Facebook. Every single one of these companies uses Oracle to execute. So when you click on an advertisement, you're in Google or you're using AdWords, or you click on an advertisement, where do you think that goes? And you pay money, it actually goes into Oracle. Right? It's actually an entry point into Oracle. We do a lot of advertising. Internet advertising is really hot right now, and it's where a lot of money is. We work with a company called Opera Software, and they own the Opera browser, but they own 10 internet advertising companies throughout the world. And these companies mint money. They literally mint money by getting you to click on those advertising pieces. So, the operational pieces, I'm taking an order, and then I'm delivering something, and I'm accounting for it. The other types of cloud systems, there's HR. HR is really big right now. Have you guys heard of Workday? Anyone heard of Workday? Okay, so in the past, in the bygone days when I was young like you guys, that companies focused on manufacturing efficiency. It was all about how could I make that widget for cheaper, okay? So we optimized our supply chain, we moved it to China, we did X and Y, and then came the kind of sales optimization. I'm gonna optimize the way I sell. I'm going to become the most efficient at customer acquisition, at getting customers, at selling things, okay? Salesforce, you saw this whole trend. Everyone adopted it, a lot of transformation. Now, what companies are finding is all their intellectual property is in their people, right? So you guys are walking out into a generation where you're actually valued. They're not so worried about how much widgets cost to make, because America doesn't manufacture widgets anymore. They've optimized their sales processes. Now, the whole trick is managing you. Getting you guys to be efficient. So there's a huge trend in cloud computing around people optimization. So we implement these HR systems, and it's kind of scary what they can do now. They can predict how long you're going to be employed there. They can predict pretty much anything about you. So they've got all these predictive analytics, like these forward-thinking analytics. They factor in your commute, your last review, any kind of awards you've gotten. They have this statistical model that predicts what you're going to do in your job and where you need to move and what you need to be trained on. It's actually really kind of scary, actually. But so the big trend. Go ahead, Said.
Sorry, what about security?
Web security, cloud security.
At some point, you're going to discuss that. All of this information goes someplace.
Yeah.
And then the security.
Good question. So all this information's out in the cloud, right? So there's standards for cloud computing. There's SAS 70. So these data centers are military-grade data centers. And so the security is actually so tight that I can be in Oracle's data center and I can't connect a server next to the server beside it. So they're obsessed with security. And I wasn't going to go into security. I mean, there's corporations are obsessed with security. The cloud vendors are obsessed with security. This stuff's really pretty locked down. It's easier to break into your data center than for me to break into that 5.9's data center in Austin, because there's optical recognition. I mean, they're like bunkers. But you're right. I'm putting a level of information out there about you. I mean, you guys know this. I mean, everything you do on the internet is stored, right? And tracked. And now with big data and artificial intelligence, they're patterning that together, right? So that's why I was saying there's a huge transition in AI, right? we've got all this data on you. Like we're afraid of the government. We should be afraid of the government, right? So, but you should be more afraid of Google, right? Because Google's scarier than the government. They know everything you've done, but you're starting to see that now in systems, in operational systems, right? Where they're doing predictive analytics. They're predicting what's going to happen. Before, when I did analysis, I asked it a question, I summed some stuff up, I did some averages, and I got a result. But now, they're saying, oh, based on all these factors, I think this is going to happen. Okay? I went out to the web and I predicted that your Twitter feeds are trending on this product. You're selling this. You're losing because of this. So there's this huge transition on the predictive side that should get us excited and a little scared. Right? Another big place where you see AI and cloud systems is in service. And you guys see this a little, but there's a lot of automation going on in how I service you and how I take care of you when you have a problem. Because right now, especially in your generation, the millennials, you guys are, how would I characterize you? You guys are impatient, okay? You guys are smart, you guys have short attention spans, right? So you're not gonna sit around and wait for anything. And so the systems that they're feeding up to you guys have to be very quick, have to be very slick, and have to be very comprehensive. There's a big change. I mean, your generation is a lot different. We kind of joke about this in our business, but because we're dealing, like I said, with the Riot Games, where everyone's 22 or 23, and it's a very different crowd of people. This is how companies start. When you go exit this room and decide to start your company, which I hope you do, you come up with some great idea. You're going to start out in this room right there, and that couch is going to cost you $39 on Craigslist. And then you're going to go out and get QuickBooks. QuickBooks is the biggest financial system in the world, right? It costs $100 or whatever, and it's what people use for accounting. ADP is payroll because eventually you're going to have to pay someone. Not under the table, not in an envelope, but eventually you're actually going to have to pay someone. And then, the biggest accounting system of all time is Excel, right? We do almost everything. So this is how all companies start. Okay? And the interesting thing is, guys, we're dealing with these companies now that are nothing, and then in 4 years are billion-dollar companies. So you think about how convulsive that is from a systems perspective. Okay, so this is your business a year down the road, okay? You're in a big room with a lot of monitors and a lot of desks. That looks like a lot of companies we go into. You've added Salesforce because now you've got to sell something. You've added Expensify because now you want to take people's expenses. Now I want to get paid. I go on a trip, work trip, whatever. So I'm adding systems. Part of the downfall of the cloud, though, is that I'm buying all these different systems. When I bought this big Oracle thing, they came in, charged me $5 million. Now I'm buying a whole series of different systems. And then, here's your business 2 years down the road. Guys. Okay, so I've got, this is project management. This is financial planning. This is expense management. This is configuration management. Someone orders my engineering thing I just designed. I got to configure it and order it. So I wind up with this host of applications. And guys, I have a client who's a $700 million internet services company. They have 52 of these systems that don't talk to each other. And they're like, wow, we got to fix this because we wound up being a $700 million company in a really short period of time. None of this stuff talks to each other. I really don't know what's going on in my business. I'm really in trouble. So in these situations, you have many, many data sources, which is a bad thing. You have a lot of manual processes. You duplicate data entry, highly error prone, and reporting is difficult. So the interesting thing about business, guys, is it's actually really easy to grow like this. You have a product, you have an idea, it's amazing, no one else is in the market, and you grow like crazy. And then what happens after you've grown like crazy from a competitive perspective? Other people come into the market, they're like, I like what you're doing. That's really interesting. Okay, so then you're sitting here going, wow, I got $700 million in revenue. I'm not profitable because none of these companies are profitable. They don't worry about profitability. They're like, don't worry about it. We'll make it up in volume. We'll lose money and make it up in volume. So that's the general prevailing wisdom when you're like this. Because you never perceive that curve is going to change. So what smart companies do is I need operational efficiency, right? I need to be efficient. to be competitive in the long term, right? I had my great idea, I had my widget, it's phenomenal, I made a ton of money. Everyone comes into the market, because the big guys wait, right? They don't come into a market until it's mature. They're not gonna enter a market until it's interesting. So focusing your company on operational efficiency is really, really important. And that's the finance piece in your brain, right? That's the piece that says, like, I'm an inventor, I'm a creator, but I also have to create something that's built to last. And that means it's efficient, it's optimized. And that's not in a lot of people's DNA. It's not in creators' DNA for the most part. So that's why a lot of times you see great creators get someone who's like, someone who's really, really operationally good. Jobs actually was obsessed with operational efficiency. His whole big claim to fame with the Mac was his manufacturing facility. He had everything painted to the T, and he was obsessed with operational efficiency. He was obsessed with elegance, right? It's just obsessed with elegance. So, a lot of companies, they get here, and their first reaction is to do nothing, right? I'm afraid I'm just gonna do nothing, And then, so this is a lot of the first reaction. The second thought process is let's just level it and start over. And we see this a lot. We see this a fair amount, and this is expensive, right? You go into, just to give you guys some context, you go into a big company, and if I want to redo your operational system, I could pull $100 million out of you. I could get you to spend a lot of money. I'm sure JDS, I know they spend a fortune on operational tools. And the texture of business is changing because the United States doesn't manufacture anything anymore. For the most part, they don't manufacture anything anymore. We're a service economy, right? It's internet services, it's consulting, the like. So when we talk about efficiency, a lot of times it's like that use case I just described to you where I'm clicking on an advertisement, I'm selling a product on Amazon. You better believe Amazon's pretty operationally efficient. Have you guys ever seen their operation? If there's a penny, they're falling all over that penny. We see this every once in a while, just level it, but most of the time companies are pretty cost conscious and they can't do that. Yeah, this is my inclination. Tap the brakes and just go take a vacation. Right? A lot of people are really afraid of this because they're not good at it. This is not in people's DNA. And this is where you see companies like McKinsey. You guys have heard of McKinsey and Deloitte and Bain and Booz. And, so you pay these guys $450, $500 an hour to come in and tell you how you should operate. So that's a big cost. But a lot of people are just like, you know what? We're just going to go on like we are, hang our head in the sand, and just not acknowledge that we're getting caught up to in the industry. And you guys see this a lot. You guys see a lot of your favorite companies kind of peak out and go, and then get displaced. This is kind of the natural cycle of the economy, right? So, the step to the next, the proper step is just to have highly efficient processes. The second, so whatever you do when you're transitioning, you have to build a roadmap. And that roadmap is kind of a thorough design of best practices. So when we go and look at best practices, a lot of times I used to describe, like if I was talking about a manufacturing facility, I talk about Taco Bell, right? Super efficient process, right? You go up, you walk up, there's always a couple people in line, or maybe a couple people in line. They always have the right amount of cheese in that bin. They always have the right amount of tacos. Their supply chain, their efficiency is enormous, right? It's the same thing in any business, right? You want to eliminate all the waste and design efficiency. So what we typically do is we go in and we architect a roadmap for a best practice around a particular thing, business process. It might be taking an order. It might be shipping. If I ship a product right now, if I ship from Dell, or any of these companies, they're making the drive in Shanghai or Suzhou. They're making the box. They're following the labor curve, right? So there's 15 things coming together at what they call a 3PL in a 3PL in some place. And so the efficiency of getting all those things at the right time is huge. Who's the biggest computer repair company in the world? Who's the biggest computer repair company in the world? What's that? UPS. Okay. So when I send my computer back, where do you think it goes? It goes to a UPS distribution facility and they fix it right there. Because from an efficiency perspective, can you get any more efficient than that? It goes one hop to the UPS distribution facility and it's fixed. And then it comes back to me. So I know all the optimization stuff sounds easy, but it's super complex. For Amazon to deliver something to your door, soon to be in a drone, but today on Prime, just the level of efficiency is enormous, and they're obsessed with operational efficiency. So you get companies that are obsessed with operational efficiencies, companies that are obsessed with design. When you guys go out into the real world, you want to be obsessed with everything. You want to be the best engineer. You want to come up with those great, elegant solutions. But at the end of the day, if you want someone to buy them, that you have to have a scalable operational company. So we come in and we'll apply best practices to these components. I have to talk to a lot of CEOs. I'm talking to senior people, right? So, you know, I graduated from 10 years from Sonoma State's a great story. They love that story because all these CEOs, what's the average GPA of a CEO? The average GPA of a Fortune 500 CEO?
3.0.
Lower?
2.8.
Lower?
2.0.
It's 2.6. The average Fortune 500 CEO is GPA. So I am an average Fortune 500 CEO. Grade point average. 2.6. Go Google it. Out of 4? Yes, out of 4. So I hate to be saying this in an academic environment, but
Those who have a degree.
because for those who are, yeah, exactly. Oh boy. So yeah, that's my joke. I am a completely average Fortune 500 CEO. So like I said, when you actually get into this, you want a roadmap and you actually need, go ahead.
Why would it be a 2.6, not higher?
Why would it be? We're going to talk about that in a minute, actually. We're going to talk about that. Because that's counterintuitive, right? Isn't the smartest kid in school the most successful?
Grades aren't necessarily a reflection of how smart you are. It's more of a work ethic thing. So you'd still think that a better work ethic would do it.
There's one element successful CEOs have, and people have, and it's not something you think about, right? There's one thing we're going to cover in a minute. There's one piece. So, guys, what we do, we come in, we do the roadmap, we do the foundation, automation, we optimize and expand, we refine and support, but we do it in pieces. We typically don't go in and boil the ocean. People are afraid of boil the ocean stuff now. They want you to help them with a particular thing. I've got a pricing problem. You know, I've got a big pricing problem. I've got a distribution problem. I've got a delivery problem. Boil the ocean means I'm going to come in and fix everything at once. So if you guys ever hear that term, like we're going to boil the ocean, run away, because it doesn't work, right? You'll be unemployed in 6 months, right? You'll be sitting there going, I'm not going to have a job. You want to bite things off in chunks that you can actually deliver something. I don't like to do anything unless I can complete it in 3 months, because everyone loses interest. And it's like, I told my son this. My son is at Carnegie Mellon, and he's developing a software product. And he kind of came to me with this big complex explanation. I'm like, well, stop. If you can't deliver something in 3 months, you're going to lose everyone's interest. So Instagram, right? The Instagram guys, they're like 90 days, that's it, right? Facebook, they're all the same. They all have the same talk track. Deliver value quickly. If it takes too long, you will never be successful. Shy away from big ideas, right? Have a clean core idea. Oh boy, so yeah, we talked about, success drivers or resource time. We always underestimate how much time this stuff is going to take when we're designing something, when we're building something, when we're creating something. We always confuse ourselves with the vision, right? You have to be able to attain the vision or you have nothing. So it's always harder than you think. Start small. Adopt leading practices. No one's creating anything new. Find out who's done it well and do it that way. And then data and integration. So data quality is always, everyone's data is always crap, right? So I start out my sales pitch with all the bad things that are going to happen. Leading practices, like I said, whether it's designing a product, which you're learning leading practices, or the like, you really want to verse yourself in what the best-in-class processes are. And like I said, all companies run the same, so this isn't hard to learn, right? How I take an order, how I ship a product, how I design a product. And when you're out there pitching your idea to a CEO or a venture capitalist or whatever, you got to be deep and broad. You got to be able to have a broad conversation. Because the one thing VCs hate when they're listening to your idea is like, I got this cool idea. And the first thing they ask you is, how are you going to get it to market? How are you going to sell it? How are you going to build it? And then people just freeze up. They're like, I don't know. But I got a great idea. I thought about it in the shower. And I talked to like Mark Andreessen and some of these guys, and they're just like, they just like execute you summarily, right? Bang, they sit there with that proverbial gun and just shoot you in the head. Having an idea is meaningless, it's worthless, it has no value. It's how you execute on that idea that matters. That's all that matters. You have to execute it in a short period of time, it has to be a clean idea. You have to be able to explain it to me in the elevator in 15 seconds. I pound my kids on this. I'm like, if you can't explain it in 15 seconds, you don't have an idea, right? It's not an idea, you know. So just, if you remember anything, remember that. You have to communicate your idea in 15 seconds in an elevator. Think of it as your elevator pitch, right? And if you're going off on the detail on this, you know, everybody's got ADD. Everybody in industry. So especially executives, they won't listen to you past 15 minutes, you know, or 15 seconds. They'll be like, okay, off to the next thing. Tell me something important. Tell me something powerful. Data quality, I'm not going to go too far into it. Integration is a big thing in systems and operational systems because you're always integrating to something. And it's something frequently people just underestimate. And then get bigger. So people, process, systems. So considerations when you're looking at enterprise systems, guys. So there's a couple big enterprise cloud systems, and they're at war. I happen to be in the Oracle camp, and actually, I'm going to tell you why I'm in the Oracle camp. Has everyone heard of SAP? Okay, so SAP is another big system. So I'm doing this selection. I told you about this $10,000 one-day-a-week gig. I'm doing a selection. So I call the SAP guys and I'm like, hey, I'm interested in getting a quote on your product. So, and they're like, well, can we talk to the CEO? I'm like, no, you talk to me. So the next day, I get a note, an email from the sales guy at SAP to his boss telling him what a jerk I was. But he forwarded me the email by accident. It's like, have you ever sent someone an accidental email? Well, let me tell you, don't tell a client or a prospective client you think they're a jerk and send it to your boss. And send it to them too. So I never did big business with that company. That's partially why I'm in the Oracle camp. So like I said, there's a huge war in cloud computing. It's still very, very, very early. The majority of everyone are on on-premise applications. Let's skip to the entrepreneurial thing. Okay, guys. So I told you a little bit about my story. Oops, I didn't have a job. I live in Sonoma County. I don't want to move. I don't want to move to the Silicon Valley. You know, you guys are young, but
it doesn't help that it's one of the most expensive counties in California.
California, Sonoma County. Yeah. But I just didn't want to move. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go out on my own. I'm going to start cold calling. Another thing, guys, if you can't pick up the phone and cold call people, you really got to ask yourself that question. I know everyone looks down on sales. Everyone's like, sales is a subhuman job. You know, sales is the only job. You're selling yourself. You're selling your idea. You're selling your invention. It's actually the only job there actually is. Everything else we're learning in school is like, okay, this is a good skill. But if you're not selling, if you're not capable of selling, then you're going to have problems with your career. You know? You're going to be on the line throughout your career because people are going to want you to validate what you believe in, where you're going, what your idea is, what your plan is. And if you can't sell that plan, then you're going to get pigeonholed in some little job where you're a technician. And you don't want to be a technician. You don't want to be the best widget maker. You want to be the person with the idea, the person who can get the idea out. The Steve Jobs, who is just frenetic about his vision, right? So, and he dropped out of school too, right? Remember? He was not a great student. Yeah, another thing, guys, at least about being in business. You guys saw Andy Grove, so they had Intel. This was his book, Only the Paranoid Survive. If you are not paranoid and you are in business, you're not doing something right. So you should be paranoid. You have to be paranoid. Everyone in business is trying to kill you, right? They're all out there to kill you. You start a business, you're in business, it's all the same. So be paranoid. People are like, don't be paranoid. It's a bad thing. It's a bad emotion. It's not. Be afraid because the things that kill you in business and in life are never the things that are in front of you. It's never like, oh, I got to worry about that. It's always the car that hits you from behind as you're traveling down the highway. You never know what's going to kill you. Be paranoid. Anyone in this room paranoid? Good now. My VP of sales, who's phenomenal, is the most paranoid person I've ever met. He's like, can tell me 100 ways why I'm going to lose this deal. Every time. I mean, he's like, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. And there's a hint of truth to everything he says. So be paranoid. It's not a bad thing. This is, you guys hear this a lot now, probably because this is in your generation. And that's fail often. Okay? You're not learning anything unless you're failing. So we all go through school, and school teaches us to be careful. Teaches us not to make mistakes. Teaches us to get good grades. But you are only learning. You will only be good if you have had epic failures. Anyone had any good effort failures? I hope. I hope for you. I hope you have. Okay? Because if you haven't, it's going to be very hard for you to create something great. Everybody great fails, and fails big. The key is learn from it and move on quickly. Don't dwell on it.
Like betting on the Cowboys.
It's like creating that product. My first product out of college, I got a call from Guy Kawasaki. Anyone heard of him? Guy Kawasaki was the guy at Apple. He was the original software analyst for Jobs. So I'm at a Sonoma State. No, I think I was about 23, and Guy's like, hey, we want you to develop a terminal emulator for the Mac. Okay, the terminal emulator is the thing that makes the screen look like it's a terminal for a mainframe, right? That was hot back then. That was the hot technology. So I'm like, Guy Kawasaki, wow. The downside was there was no compiler on the Mac. You couldn't develop on the Mac for the Mac until well after it was released. You had to develop on Elisa. They gave me Elisa. It was like a $12,000 computer 35 years ago or something. They gave me a 5 meg hard drive that cost $7,000. 5 meg hard drive. It was amazing. It was a hard drive, right? You could store data on that thing and it would come back. Okay? So it was amazing. So Guy's like, hey, you develop this thing, you'll be a billionaire. This guy's a big guy. Guy Kawasaki was a big deal. He was a big deal back then. So I'm like, okay, we're going to do that. And I actually developed it with one of the professors at Sonoma State. Okay. We spent 2 years, a year and a half to develop it. So little did I know that Guy had gone off to 20 other companies and said the same thing. You're going to be a billionaire. You're going to be rich. Do this. Develop this product. So when we came out with our product, 20 other companies did. Epic failure, right? Put our heart and soul into something, but it taught me a lot, right? It was a great lesson for me. It was a wonderful lesson for me. At the time, it didn't feel so wonderful because I thought, I'm 24, I'm going to be filthy rich, you know, I'm going to drive around in my yacht and my Ferrari, but so fail often. Please fail often. This is my average GPA score. So guys, this is a truism. Right? You walk into these C-suites, these CFOs, these CEOs, they're not the pampered few, right? They're not the prima donnas, they're not the brilliant guys, they're just not, okay? That's why my down-to-earth 10 years at Sonoma State story really resonates with these people. They're like, you worked. When I was in high school, I scrubbed toilets and dishes in a Mexican restaurant for cash under the table, right? I worked, right? Has everyone in this room worked? Like really worked? Not, you know, okay? They respect that, man. They get that. Because all these people at the top of this food chain are people that worked. They never were handed anything. They were never entitled to anything. So, you know, my staff, my right-hand guy, my CEO, is a Harvard astrophysicist. I have Oxford MBAs, Stanford MBAs, all work for me, right? I'm a guy who took 10 years to graduate from Sonoma State. So these guys are not the guys at the top. The guys at the top are the guys, we'll go on to the next slide. Oh, really quick, guys. When you're coming up with your idea and you're going to create your product, your smart friends are your team, right? So you're in engineering school or whatever. You're going to go pull from the brightest people you know, and they're always the people that make you successful. So you don't need to look far. Don't look far, right? It's you and a buddy. It's you and that guy who's an ace Java programmer, right? So just remember that, rely on that. Don't think about people and teams in an abstract way. It's the person you know that you're like, that person is awesome. I love that person. They're great. And you all have people in your lives that are like that, right? You all have people that you're like, I'd love to work with that guy. That guy's really smart. Awesome. He's going to start. He's the only one who said he's going to start a company. Find a mentor, guys. So throughout my career, one thing I've been really good at is find someone you really respect and use them. I mean, you know, whether it's an executive something or someone you really respect. Because, you know, it's a huge mistake to get data points from a lot of people. This is a mistake most people make. It's like you want to get data points from 2 or 3 people that you really respect. And I hate to say this, but I tell my kids this, ignore everyone else. Like, ignore everyone else. Because frankly, in your life and in business, there are going to be a couple people who will impact you, and everything else is noise, right? Everyone gives you their noise, their opinion, why your idea is a stupid idea, or it'll never work, et cetera, et cetera. So find the people you respect, find a mentor, and then cultivate those relationships. Those will last your lifetime, and they will help you be successful. Whenever you see these big companies like Jobs, there's always a Woz, there's always like someone behind them that they really respected and really helped them get. Guys, this is the interesting thing. This is the gambler's logic. That we talked about, you know, the question was why don't CEOs have a higher GPA? They all have one thing in common. Everyone who's super successful, they're all risk takers, right? They're all gamblers. They're all people who are willing to show up one day and bet everything on the line. Everything, right? If you can't do that with your life, you'll never be successful, right? So the one coefficient of success in business or in personal life is, am I going to be brave enough to take a risk? And you're taking advantage of the fact that 99.9% of the universe, people are afraid. They're afraid of taking any risk or any chance. They've been brought up in an environment that says, don't take a chance, don't stretch, don't fail. You know, all the things you learn in school are the things that make you unsuccessful, right? You get that, right? So take way more risk than you're comfortable with, right? It should be scary. It should be fearful, right? You should be afraid. If you're doing this, you should be afraid. But take risk. I mean, it's amazing how much risk you feel comfortable. Once you've failed a couple times, once you've done this, it's amazing how willing you are to take that step off the cliff. And the real rewards and the real gains are only given to those people who are willing to take enormous risk. So all these people at the top of these companies, they're just risk takers. They're not the smartest people. They get the Harvard MBAs and everyone under them for operational efficiency and stuff. I'm not a smart guy. I can communicate and I can take risks, right? I lost my job. I got on the phone. I didn't run off to the next job. I just decided I'd take some risks. How many people are really comfortable taking risks? Good. Good. Be unemployed. Lose your job. Get fired. Right? All those things they tell you shouldn't do, I basically got fired. Okay? So I had to take a risk, right? You hear this all the time. People that are super successful, they're just like, lost my job, have nothing else to do. Okay, I'm going to go do something off the chart. Take a lot of risk. This is the most important point in any of this. Take a lot of risk. We talked about this a little. Speed is what separates you from the crowd. Time is your enemy. Time kills everything. Okay? I have this great grandiose idea, and in 6 years I'll make it happen. Time kills everything. Okay? Time is your enemy. When you have an idea, like I said, I don't like anything to last more than 3 months. Nothing. Okay? If you get pulled into a project that's a 3-year project, be afraid. Right? If you get pulled into this big grandiose thing, unless you're working for NASA on the next space shot, but time is your enemy. Speed and agility is all you have. Right? Corporations, that's a corporation, right? It's bloated, it's fat, it's going to come in late in the game. Speed and agility is what you have. You're young, you're smart, you have speed, you have agility. You must be able to sell. And you have to be excited about what you're doing. Because guys, if you're not excited about what you're doing, no one's going to be excited about it, right? So a lot of times that's hard to pull that excitement out of you. You have to be a cheerleader. I talk about my CEO role. All I am is a cheerleader. I'm getting other people excited about stuff. You have to be able to get excited and bring that excitement to everyone around you. Everyone's afraid of that. Everyone's afraid of being excited about it or energized about it. But you have to be able to get excited about it and translate that excitement. You see jobs, right? You see these guys that are like, they're almost Bengalis. They like they're magical, right? And you look at them and you're like almost mesmerized. You have to internalize that skill. It's not an easy skill to internalize. Get comfortable with getting excited and selling. We talked about this a little bit. The wealth is always created when there's a fundamental shift. Generally when there's a fundamental shift. Technology or time. You guys are lucky enough to be born at a time or going into the work world at a time when there's a fundamental shift. And there's a huge fundamental shift coming on with AI and electronics and usability and stuff. Like I said, the transition from apes to Neanderthals is a huge transition. AI and these things are going to dramatically change the way the world functions. So figure out how you can apply your knowledge, your energy, your drive into this change that's happening and help it and catalyze on it. The most important thing that can go for you guys is happening, and that's you're born at the right time. You can't change that, right? If you were born during the Depression, you were born during the Depression, so you're born at the right time. What's that?
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah, good luck. Good luck. There's not a lot of change in so. Just in summary, guys, and we're wrapping up right at the right time. Only the paranoid survive. Be very, very, very paranoid in your life. Fail often, fail a lot. Get comfortable with it. I hate to say this at a school, right? This is an academic institution, and I want you guys to get grades, good grades for yourself, but grades aren't what make you successful, right? Your smart friends, that's your network, right? You've chosen your friends for a reason. You've chosen the people around you for a reason. They're the people that matter. Listen to them. Listen to the people you respect. Ignore everyone else. And I know that sounds really harsh. Obviously, you're not going to ignore everyone, but most people's input and feedback is a lot of noise. Find a mentor. Find someone who can help you. Time is your enemy. Sell, 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 sell. Be comfortable selling. Go door to door. I used to make my kids cold call on the way to school. I used to make them cold call for charity on the way to school. And they're like, Dad, please, I'm calling these people. I don't even know them. And then take advantage of these fundamental shifts. Like when shifts are happening, there's just nothing but opportunity. And that's it. Any questions? And we're right on time.
So what you do when you have like extreme paranoia and it's holding you back from taking these risks?
I love that question. That's actually a great question. So I've told you to be really afraid and then at the same time take risks. Boy, I guess that the reality is that those two things have to live inside of you, and you have to keep them compartmentalized to a certain degree. So, so here's the deal. You want to be a super risk taker. You don't want to make stupid risks. You don't want to take stupid risks. So the paranoia helps you kind of tamp that in, so you're not literally like walking up to the end of the cliff and dropping down. You want to take smart risks. You want to take a lot of smart risks. Use that paranoia or nervousness to help tamp that into smart, logical stuff.
Well, the way I thought about that was paranoia doesn't mean you should not make a decision.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah. So
let me be paranoid, but eventually you have to make a decision and make a risk.
Yeah, let me be really clear because that site has a really important point. So guys, I don't mean paranoia like stopping me. You have to be execution oriented. To be successful in this world, you have to be able to make a decision now, right now, with the data you have. If you wait, it's a bad decision. So no decision is always a bad decision. When I say paranoia, I just mean aware of what the obstacles and the real threats are. But you have to be able to execute. If you're slow in your decision-making process, it's a huge handicap. I used to be really methodical, like I got to analyze the crap out of this. I'm going to go look at this take the data you have in your head, make a decision, make it now. Do you have a question?
No, you don't.
So I work at a company now where pretty much everything is done in Excel.
Yep.
They have this magic spelled Excel spreadsheets. And it really hurts efficiency, like you're saying. A lot of things aren't connected together, no shared data, and so forth. What would you say to somebody who wants to start a company and start using Excel for everything?
I would say right now there's really inexpensive cloud solutions to actually that are best practices. So I'd say for a small amount of money, you can invest in, if I was starting a company, I'd use QuickBooks Online for $99. If it was project management, I'd use OpenAir or something. So, I mean, yeah, you're right. The downside effect of having a lot of disconnected stuff is then there's never any consistency in how you look at the business. You don't know what, you'll never know what's going on. So I'd argue there's some really inexpensive solutions to do that.
Great talk, thank you. You mentioned one of the bullets was sell.
Yep.
So it's a kind of personal question maybe.
Sure.
Do you think communication skills or the phenomenal ability to sell is a talent or something in the genes or something that we can work on and develop?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, guys. So believe it or not, I was relatively shy, right? And then I realized that when you have a passion for something, it helps you be excited about it. If you really feel strongly something, and really, when I'm in all these sales situations, it's all about a personal connection. It's all about understanding what motivates you. It's all about talking about your kids, your family, your life. So I think if you want to develop that skill set for really selling, it's simply not selling. If you're selling, you're doing it wrong. It's just creating a personal connection around something you have in common with someone, right? It's really easy. But making that step to do it, right? Because everyone doesn't want to extend themselves. I find everyone I meet, I find interesting, right? Everyone has something to teach me, whether it's the farm worker or whatever. I mean, I think everyone's lives are fascinating. So if you have that attitude, you're not selling. You're just making a personal connection, and then once people have that personal connection with you, they'll follow you off the ends of the earth, literally. Like, it's a leadership paradigm, really, right? You have to care about people. So if you care about people, you're there, right? If you fundamentally care about people, you're done. That's all you need to do. Yeah, I meant selling as an abstract, but it's really about creating a connection. It's about wanting people to be successful, right? Every situation I go in where I'm selling, it's because I really want them to be successful, because I really believe what I have to help them is going to make them better. So I think if you take that attitude about any relationship, any circumstance, whether it's selling or not, if you genuinely want people to succeed, and not everyone does. I mean, that's not a universal trait. But if you generally want people to succeed, then that's all you need to do. Awesome, guys. Hey, thank you. Thanks for coming.